I'd like to thank the witnesses for participating in what promises to be a lively hearing. I look forward to hearing from you about our trade opportunities in Asia, and I want to thank Ranking Member Sherman. We approach trade quite differently, but I'm looking forward to having this debate and having a great group of testimonies from the members of the panel. The scale of our economic ties with Asia is vast. 3 of 7 of our top trading partners are in Asia. 3 of our top 6 holders of U.S. Treasury bonds is in Asia, where their combined ownership exceeds $2.5 trillion. Trade, especially U.S. economic and trade policy in the Asia-Pacific, will be one of the major issues this Congress will deliberate. Increased U.S. presence in the region through the Trans-Pacific Partnership would greatly improve the American economy, as well as provide considerable diplomatic and strategic benefits. Let me start off by saying we live in a globalized world. That's already happened. Nothing's going to change that, whether anybody here likes it or not. It's only right for the United States to take advantage of the opportunities that globalization can afford us, especially as it can improve the livelihoods of Americans and improve trade and labor conditions abroad. Excluding ourselves from a monumental trade agreement that has clearly distinguished itself from previous FTAs would be unproductive and detrimental to our interests in Asia. TPP would provide comprehensive and high-standard guidelines for trade and commerce in the Asia-Pacific. A robust and comprehensive TPP has the potential to improve our economy and provide consistency and stability in Asia. When Congress passes TPP, the world will know we are dedicated to economic prosperity through the facilitation of strong and inclusive rules-based, market-oriented economic growth. While the details of the trade agreement are still not public, I am confident that TPP will address issues such as preventing state-owned enterprises from having an unfair advantage in a market, or setting clear rules of origin, or constructing safeguards to protect intellectual property. I am also confident that TPP will also foster job creation by incentivizing industry to invest in domestic production and manufacturing. Opponents of free trade will say our country will be flooded with low-cost imports. It is important to note the United States already has relatively low tariffs and minimal other trade barriers, with 70% of our imports already duty-free. We should not be worried about imports flooding our market after TPP is passed. Instead, TPP will help lower trade barriers U.S. manufacturers and companies that we are seeking access to other countries, providing U.S. trade and investment opportunities with other countries. If the United States does not actively participate in a comprehensive multilateral agreement in Asia, we may lose out on opportunities for growth and influence in the region. China is leading the way in pushing for an alternative regional economic and trade agreement called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, which excludes the United States. Reports have indicated that negotiations may focus on broad issues and avoid sensitive areas, so it will be likely to be a lower standard trade agreement. Additionally, the agreement would facilitate intra-RCEP trade by lowering tariffs among participating countries, but it would exclude the United States from those trade benefits. As China takes the lead in proposing alternative economic futures for Asia at the exclusion of the United States, the TPP would reassert our presence in the region. Through TPP, we would be able to shape rules and introduce U.S. practices to countries like Vietnam to improve conditions for human rights and labor practices, or provide environmental protection and intellectual property rights protection clauses. We would not see those types of provisions in a China-led trade agreement, I can assure you. China can allege that the United States is rebalancing to Asia purely to achieve military outcomes, but the successful negotiation and implementation of a TPP agreement will counter Beijing's notions that we are only focused on the security rebalance to Asia, as well as reassure our allies and our friends in the region that we are a reliable economic partner. After all, the United States has been and will continue to be a Pacific power. I look forward to hearing our distinguished witnesses this morning and hope they will be able to address how the TPP would set guidelines that would improve our economic strength both at home and abroad, and tell us what steps are necessary for a successful outcome. I now yield to Mr. Sherman, the ranking member of the subcommittee, for his opening remarks, and then we will move quickly to questions because we have a few members that have to get to airplanes. Thank you, Mr. Sherman.